Hey guys, Chief Rudy here, and this is the BTS for Trolls Walk, which is the first track of Wreckage. So I'm going to be going through all the tracks of Wreckage through BTS. Probably about one per week, maybe two, we'll see. And yeah, I'm just going to go right into this BTS. So first off, with Trolls Walk, it used 36 audio tracks total and is 122 BPM. So I'm just pointing that out, and now I'm going to go right into the drums here, which I did spell with a Z, if you caught that. So for the kick here, this is this kick sample. This is the kick sample without any effects. So it already is a pretty basic kick from the sample, and then with the effects, I really wanted to get the kick sample for Trolls Walk to be really bassy because this is an EDM song, and a lot with EDM is really focusing on the kick and very little on the snare. So that's kind of what I did here. I really wanted to get this kick out. So I'm going to show you on track 3 what I did. So I just put on this reverb, and just with this reverb and with volume on here, that really got the kick to come out. So yeah, that was the kick. Now right into the snare. So that's the snare there. Now without those snare effects, it's like this. So that's kind of a boring snare sample. So on the effects, I put on some reverb. That got it to pop out a little bit more, as well as turning it up. That helped fix it. But because this was EDM, this is kind of like a perfect sample for an EDM track. It's like, you know, it's not super long. It doesn't take up too much time. It's just a quick little hit. And especially when it's in a mix, it doesn't last for too long. So that's the snare and the kick there. So in the beginning, it's just playing quarter notes with the kick, like this. And then right on the very first hit, there is all of these playing. So I got a crash here. Just the standard broken crash I use almost all the time. There's no effects on this mixer track. I just put it here just to visualize it, like I do with every track up to 33. So that is it for the crash. I already showed you the kick, this snare, as well as there's this snare. This was kind of more of a hit snare I used. That would be used right here. So without these effects, the snare is like this. And then with the effects are still, you can still kind of hear them. It's like this, and that is in a patcher. So the snare is going through this patcher, and the snare is getting reverb through this effector. It is getting reverb through the reverb, fruity reverb, and some EQ through EQ-UO. And this one, I just thought it would be interesting just to kind of use this EQ plugin. Like I could have just gone right to this. But I just thought it would be interesting to use this, so I just use this just because I want just to get some variety, because, you know, I look at this one a lot, so I just did that. So that is it for the snare. I did not turn it up here because the reverb got it pretty loud already, as well as here I did not turn it up there either because that's pretty loud, so I didn't need to get that any higher. So now going back into this hit, I have a second snare also playing, so this would actually be the third snare. Just a little popping snare. So I really like this sample, and without the effects, it's just like that. So I got it to pop out a lot more with the effects that I put onto it. I put on an EQ boosting the highs, because I really wanted to get it to pop a lot more. So I got that, and then I put on some distortion with a wave shaper. Now, not very much distortion, because this is the default, and I just got it up to there. If I really wanted to distort it, it would be something like this. But I didn't want to distort it that much, because it's a snare. So I just did that. And it got it enough distortion, and with the EQ boosting those highs, it really got it to pop out. So I really like that about that snare. This clap. So I just got this clap here, and it has some reverb on it, and some EQ boosting the lows, because this clap like this, I just wanted to kind of highlight these harmonics a little bit more. So that's it for the clap there. I also got a hi-hat. So playing this hi-hat, I boosted up the volume because this hi-hat was kind of a really soft hi-hat here, so I had to get a little louder so you can hear it in the mix. And then I have this reverb here to get it to resonate more. And then with the EQ, I did nothing with this EQ. I probably was doing this, and I took it out, and I just didn't get rid of the plugin. So, looks like there's a little bit more in here. I have a second hi-hat. This one's even softer. So with this hi-hat, I turned it down, and nothing with the EQ, and some reverb. As well as, now the final one is this ride. So this is a really long ride. This ride, I just used it for the hit. And if you look down here on the lower right, I boosted all of the EQ. Because I just wanted to get a little bit louder in that sense, as well as I put up some highs here. So I just ran it through some EQ here and turned up the volume. That's all I did for that ride. So that is it for all of the drum samples. I know that was a lot. Looks like about 3 through 12, so that would be 9 drum samples there. And that's quite a bit for an EDM track. So the next thing, I'm going to go into this acoustic resonance. So this one I got from a Citrus. Now this one was a preset. I don't know what preset it was, but I changed it a lot. So I don't think I'd be able to find it again. So what's happening with this synth is it has 2 voices in unison to give it that acoustic resonance that it needs. And the pitch is down because when these are high, it just sounds weird. So it got turned down to about there. And it's going through all 3 filters at once. So why it's doing all 3 of these filters is basically, and then it's all through operator 2. So they're all going through these 3 filters, going through operator 2 with this wave, which I don't really know what you call that. Like, it's kind of like a saw kind of thing. And that wave is going through these filters, and with those 2 working together with this effects, with this extra little bit of unison right to the output. So these filters are kind of teaming with operator 2. So I'm not really going to go into what these filters are doing because these are basically just working right through operator 2, and I already explained to you that operator 2 is kind of like a saw wave here. And then it also is running at just below 0.1 frequency. It's a little bit lower, so that would be 1, and it's just 200 lower. And then, let's see, looks like that's all that's happening inside of the Citrus, except for operator 1, which I did not use, but it's running this wave. And then here, this is like kind of like a modified saw in a way that's going kind of the opposite direction. That's running through an operator 3. So that's going on inside of this Citrus. And I put this onto track 23. And I took out the lows here. Because with these lows, it just got too much bass. So I took out some bass, and I added some reverb, and I put on another EQ. And on this EQ, I just took it from here and boosted it up to about here on the overall. And what that did is it just basically turned up the volume a little bit more, because I already had it maxed out on this mixer track. So I just wanted to turn it up a little bit more. So I used the EQ. And this is the pattern that ARP is playing. And here I got this lead that's starting for the intro, like. So this was playing the pattern from the drop, which I'll show you later. But what this lead is doing is, this is a preset from, where is it? I haven't been, Sequence. It's something from Sequence. I don't remember because I renamed it to lead and I got rid of all this stuff. So I don't know, but it's something from Sequence, and and that's what gives it that pitch shift. And as you can see here, it has 3 voices in unison, and the pitch is down. Because when this is high, like, it's just weird, so I turned it down a little bit. And then this first wave here is basically a square wave, kinda. So I got it going through a square wave, in a way. And then operator 2, this is a square wave, a true square wave, not instead of a modified square wave. And then it's just going through sine waves all the way through the rest. So operator 1 is fully engaged. With most of my synths, you know, they're not, but with this one, when it's not engaged, it doesn't really have as much depth. And then with operator 2 disengaged, it really does not have that depth. So with both of these disengaged, let's do it this way, you know, it really lacks a lot of depth. So both of those are engaged, and then if 3 was engaged, it just really messes with it. So none of these have to be engaged. It's just these two, kind of the square wave and then a modified square. And then those are going through a low pass on filter 1. And then I have an effects engaged to get some more unison through some 4 there, and then the straight to the output through the filter and then through the operators. So that's what's happening inside of the Citrus. And it's on 26, and I have a patcher here. So I have a reverb to get it some reverb, and then a compressor. And I used Maximus. This was just to compress it, as well as that I can kind of track what's going on. And I messed with the mids. I got the mids to come out a little bit more. So basically, inside of a compressor, it would just make the mids louder than the lows and the highs. That's really what it would do there. And I did not use an EQ. I could have just kind of done this. But when you do it inside of a compressor, it equally compresses it, so it's not too loud. So that's it for this. And this is what's playing. It's just doing that. I actually think I didn't put the pitch down far enough. Yeah, that sounds a little better. And then I have some noise going in, or coming out, I guess you could say. And I made this in GMS. All I did was default GMS, I just took the noise and turned it up to 100%. And you get noise. And then you just automate this filter cutoff here. And then it brings it down like this. So I'll play this. So it just fades it out. And then it fades it back in. So that is it for the noise, which I might have put on one of these tracks. Let's see. It says it's on track 27, which is here, noise. I just turned it up a little bit here. So that is just about it for this. Oh, except for this. So with this synth, it's an FM synth, like I said before. And I know you didn't really hear that at all in Trolls Walk because of this thing I did here. And that's how I got it to sound like that. And that's because I had this envelope, and basically it didn't bring it down all the way. It just brought it up to right here. This was where it cut off. So the cutoff for this would be right about there. That's just a cool thing you can do with FM synthesis when the cutoff is really low but not super low, like not 0 but like 14% or something. Then it'll get this kind of wobbly sound, which it was not enabled there. But and that's what I used it for in here with this. So if you're wondering how this FM synth was made, it's not really anything special, but I'll just go through it quickly. It's just some saws and triangles going through 3.8 pitch to 2, to 2 to 64 to 64 to 2. And operator 6 is not engaged. It's just 2 through 5. 2 is at 100%, and then 3, 4, and 5 are kind of decreasing in percentage. What they're doing there. And then that's kind of it for in the citrus. Then on 24, I put on some reverb and a EQ, taking out the lows because when they were enabled. So I just enabled the lows, and then listen to this. It's really distorted. So when I took out these lows, right here, like that, it's a little less distorted. So I don't want it to be super distorted, but you know, a little bit. So that's it for this first little section. And now let's go into this rise here. So in this rise here, it has 2 crashes right here. Just the same crash repeated twice to get it louder there. So that's just kind of simple there. The ARP is continuing. Then this lead, which was right here in the intro, was doing this. It is now playing an entire pattern. So this doesn't sound exactly right like it does in the song. I think just the pitch is off. That sounds a little better. So it's playing that all the way through. This FM is continuing, the noise is going through. And then this, I'll go into what this is in a little bit. These actually, they're not chords. I know it's titled chords, but that is because I wanted to get a song that would go from the verse, kind of like the intro thing, and break down into chords, and then rise up. And that did not work out for this song. I was going to do it for this song, but then I didn't, and I actually did that for Choir of Angels, where it broke into chords and then went to the drop. So you can see that in the Choir of Angels, BTS, in the future. So for now, I just did this. So what these are, is it's this sound. And this preset is actually called Snake Stop, somewhere in Harmore. So what I did to this is, I did a lot to this. So I'm just gonna go into what's the sound is doing, and I don't know exactly what I've done to this because I changed a lot of stuff. So it doesn't come up on here. I think that's because it's such a high frequency, so it doesn't show here. But I don't know for sure. So for now, the frequency is not full. Because when it's full, it just was a little too kind of loud, so I turned that off a little bit, as well as the unison's on 2. Without the unison, does that, and then with it. So it just sounds a little more unified with that unison. And then for the frequency is on 1 of 8. Normally the default would be 1 of 1, but it went on to 1 of 8, which basically wouldn't really do a whole lot. It would get a little bit higher, not really noticeable, but still just a little bit, got it a little more in tune of the song. And then the pluck is down a little bit with the pluck on full. You know, it was a little too loud at the end, so I put in some pluck, and then that part kind of faded out in a sense. So X is cut off and Y is bass timbre, which basically is not working because I disengaged that. But the cutoff does work. Now I did not end up using the cutoff because I didn't really want that. I wanted just this part, which was coming out. This beginning was not used in the track at all. I actually cut that out. So that's all that's going on in here. Now in here, this is the volume. That's for it fading in, and it's on an envelope, and then it has a filter 1 frequency, which is fading it in again, and then a pluck amount, and that's on velocity mapping, which basically would mean how hard you press the note. That, or if you're using a keyboard, it would mean, get it into the piano roll, would mean how the vel is, which would be this, which would be that volume, which would be how loud the note would be playing. So they're right here. So that would be mapping them at about 75%, which would be right here, so their pluck would be that much. So if you were on it really hard, and if it was full, then the pluck would be much more engaged. So that's what this velocity mapping is doing. This is the phaser mix, which originally it had a phaser, but I thought that was weird, so I took off the phaser, and then I did global EQ. And what I did here is basically I took off the lows here and added highs, because this bass thing in the beginning originally was a lot more bassy and I wanted to get that out, so I did some with the global EQ. So that was on the snake stop preset. And then onto 30, I put a lot of effects on here. Like, I don't think you can see all these effects because I'm right here covering the effects, but I'll show you. So first I have this reverb on full because I wanted to get some reverb to really get that to last. This is what I did for EQ, again, more to get rid of this low. I really wanted just to get that part out. Then I have another EQ, getting rid of lows and adding highs. And another EQ, getting rid of lows and adding highs. And then another reverb on full. And then an effector on reverb. And then another reverb on full. But this one is really wide, whereas this one is thinner, and this one is really thin as well. So that's what I did there. I didn't do anything with this equalizer because I already have like a lot. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. So that would be 3 EQs there, as well as 4 with this global EQ I did right there. So how I got rid of this first little pitch drop there was right here. I have a volume envelope, so it's at 0 volume. So that's how I got rid of that part that I didn't want. And then it's getting higher in pitch as it goes on. So that is what I did right there for this sound. Then noise, I already talked about that. So what this EQ is doing here is it's fading this lead out. So I'll play this. So basically it just kind of faded it out, and how I did that was, what track is this on? 26. On 26 I modulated all of these and automated them, and basically just brought them all down, and then I started pulling them back up. And that is what these are. They all go down, and then they start to come back up to where they normally were, which would be right here. So it brings them up to 50% again. And why I did that is basically to fade it out. I could have used a filter right here, but I didn't want to mess with this because I wanted this to stay the same. Because with this sound, the filter changes how the actual sound sounds. So I wanted to keep the harmonics of the sound the same, but still fade it out, so I used the EQ right there. So that's why I used the EQ, if you were wondering. Now it's not. That's because these envelopes was the volume. So as you can tell, the volume gets to practically nothing in the rise, and then it gets to full in the drop. That's because I didn't want this synth overwhelming everything in the rise. I still wanted this synth to still be able to be heard, because I really wanted this to hit hard in the drop, not in the rise. So that's why I barely brought up the volume there. And then so what this is doing is this is the modulating X envelope. So I'll go into that later. It might be better just to show you the synth itself right now. So this originally was just an FM synth I made. It's, like, as you can tell, it looks a lot like an FM synth, you know, with these 2 through 6 as they lessen in their amount, if you can understand that. And then 1, it has a rectangle wave, and that what gets that is what gets it the distortion here. And then 2 and 2 is a sine wave, and both these are at 2. And then 3 and 4 are at a triangle wave. And then operator 3 is a 32 pitch ratio, and operator 4 has a 33 pitch ratio. So that's a little different there. And then the last two are triangles at 64. So it is a FM synth. But I actually put it up 2 octaves higher than FM synth is normally played at. Normally I play my FM synths at C1 here, and I did it at C3, so it's 2 octaves higher, which got a little bit higher. You know, like, yeah, it would, but that's how it got that EDM feel, especially with this distortion I put on operator 1. So the filter's not engaged all the way, because if it is, it sounds like that. Most of the time in the drop, it's about here. And why I did that is just different harmonics. So I just thought that those harmonics were better. So that is on channel 22. And then on it I have full distortion going. So it's not on bypass, so with bypass it's like that. And then with the distortion, there's not much of a difference because it's already being distorted a lot through operator 1. But I just wanted to get a little extra distortion in there. And I have a reverb on full here. And then an EQ boosting the lows there. As well as I turned it down a little bit here because the distortion was getting pretty loud. I did not use a compressor, which actually kind of surprised me. I did not need a compressor. And why I think I did not need a compressor was probably because most of the distortion was happening within Citrus rather than outside. So that's why I think, I'm not sure though. So what these envelopes are doing is this is the volume that's fading in the bass here. This. And that is fading in as well as with this cutoff, so I'll start it here. So that is how that bass is fading in. And then right before the drop, there is this little effect here. This was actually one of the last things I ever did to the song. So it's way up here, pitch drop. And what this is doing is, let's see, is it running through operator 1? Pitch envelope. Yes, it is. So it's going from low pitch all the way up to 100 and then back down a little bit. So you can hear that. So, and then it will stay here until you end the note, and then it will go down. So this is playing on a triangle wave through operator 1 at 1 for the ratio instead of 2. I lowered it because when these were at 2, it was just weird. That's just too high of a pitch, so I put them down to 1. And then operator 3 spikes up to 32, and all of these operators are playing the same pitch envelope. Operator 4 is this triangle wave at 32, 5, 64 triangle wave, and 6, 64 triangle wave. So why this envelope is happening through every single operator is because if it was only happening through one operator, it would only modulate that operator. So let's disengage operator 6 and operator 3 as an example. You can still hear it. You can still hear that operator 3 and 6 are still just playing an even note. Well, 1, 2, 4, and 5 are following this. So every operator has to be doing a modulation for it to be unified. So that's all I'm doing inside of the Citrus. This is on track 28, where I put a reverb and then an EQ. And that's what happened there. And then in the pattern, I put down a lower note here to really drop it down. So it would go to, where's the snare? Right here. So when the snare, and then when this hit, so it has this effect. So it's decreasing when the snare, and then when this kind of fluttery kind of sound come in. So I got those to work together right there as the transition to the drop. So now we're gonna enter right into the drop here. So first, the drum beat of the drop is just quarter notes on a kick. You know, pretty basic stuff. But the one interesting thing I did here was right on the beginning here, I put two cymbals, but one was delayed, so it had this feel. I know it doesn't really sound like it's delayed, but still with that little bit of delay, it gives it kind of a more rough feel, which really gets this one a lot louder. So that's just a little thing I did there I wanted to show you guys. And then I have this little sub bass loop here. You probably did not hear this at all, but this was playing in the drop. Next time you listen to Trolls Walk, you can listen to that. So this is just a normal sub bass, just with distortion. How I got the distortion was I just took operator 1 and just put it up to full, and I got the distortion with playing the sine wave through itself, and it distorted it. So that was on operator 29, and I took out some lows on this. Otherwise it would be like this, but I wanted the distorted to pop out. So that's what I did there. And then this is the original, you know, this is the pattern that you hear. So that's the pattern that you hear, and that is running through this, which is just volume, which is going through the whole drop, with just the volume. And then mode X. And then why I decided to modulate cutoff was just it kind of changed the distortion and harmonic values, made it much more interesting, and it got this cool little growl. And I'll go into this little growl in a little bit. But so that was this. I already kind of went into how that was made. And then now I have this bass, which is playing this. And yes, that is playing through the entire drop. So why I added this was, it just sounded kind of empty without this. So I put this in, and how this synth was made was, it was made inside of a harmonic. And basically it's just harmonic with unison and then low pitch, as well as it has some mode X mapping with a frequency. So that's just doing some cutoff there. And that is just about it inside of Harmor. So I turned up the harmonizer width a little bit because I was experimenting with the amount, but I ended up taking it out completely, so the width doesn't really matter or play a role in the synth. So I put this onto track 31 inside of a patcher. So this is the patcher that synth is going through. So it's going through a Vocodex. And what this Vocodex is doing is it's kind of filling it up a little bit more, getting it more watery, as you can tell, because I have the wetness and the SG all the way up. And the band values I did not turn up all the way, because when they were all the way up, that was a little too full. Like, I didn't want this to be the main focus. I wanted the other distorted lead I showed you before to be the focus. So I put it at about 50%, and I turned up the real, which basically worked with this reverb through the Vocodex, which is on full. And then that's all I did inside of the Vocodex. And then I have an EQ here. So this, yeah, I know it looks really weird, but this working through this EQ. So let's see if I can, oh, I can't have both of them up. But anyways, this is really high, as you can tell. This, normally it's right here, but I tried to turn it up really high to get this little bit to show. And that's because I really wanted these mids to come through, and not really the highs or the lows. So I had a little bit of low coming in, but most of the lows for this synth are right here. So I took out the lows, and up here on the highs are all the way gone, and it's just the mids and a little bit of low harmonics right there. So that's what's going through this EQ. And then since that EQ was pretty radical, I did some changes in this EQ to then add in the highs. So the lows and the mids are completely gone. So with these EQs working together, it basically is mids, a little bit of lows, and some highs. Now I could have done this in one EQ, but since this one was all the way up, and then this one I did not want to be all the way up, I decided just to bring it to two separate EQs and route them differently, basically so the change would be more radical and more effective. And on this effector, I just have some lo-fi, but it's on bypass because I ended up not using it. I just didn't delete this effector. So that is the patcher that is going through this little bass here, right here. And then this part is a little different. It's just a lower pitch. So first I'll show you in here. And then here it's doing this. And then the cutoff is this is a patcher bandwidth envelope. And then this is the cutoff right here. So that is what's adding on this little effect inside of the drop here. So there's four basses, you know, this sub, this kind of like Wreckage bass, then there's the distorted bass, and then this one. This one is pretty interesting. So this, well, first off I'll play what it sounds like, and then I'll show you what it is. So this is what it sounds like. No, that does not really sound like how it does in the mix. I know, because in the mix it plays a lot faster. Well, not really faster, but there's a lot of sounds layered on top of it. Like there's some noise, as well as there's this sub bass, and then a snare and a drum. So those do play a role to changing the sound here. But what the sound actually is this. So this bass was made by adding in 9 voices in unison, low pitch, and then prism. That's all I did inside of the Harmore. So the prism, I just made a prism envelope right here through the prism amount to envelope, and just brought it down to 0 and put it on a loop. So it basically is taking it from 50% to 0% back to 50 to 0 in this amount of time. And that's how it gets that kind of pulsy feel, as well as with the 9 voices in unison that kind of made the prism more distorted. So without the unison it'd be like this. And then with the unison it's a lot more watery. And as you can tell up here I panned it a little bit to the left, and the reason I did that is really just for variety, so not everything's in the center, and just kind of push things out a little bit more. And I put this onto a patcher. So this is the patcher it's going through, and 3 EQs and 3 EQs, a compressor, and then a Wreckage. So this Wreckage has 100 bands of distribution. And why I did that is because I wanted to get everything really fine for the sound, so it's not really messy. And then full wetness, no SG, because I didn't really need that because I already have a compressor pulled up. And then it's threaded. I took the draft off and added on full band values. That's really all I did in the Wreckage. It's pretty simple. And then the EQs though. This one is adding in some highs and a little bit of lows, so that's a really simple EQ. And I have a Maximus, which is compressing the lows the most, and then the mids and the highs it is compressing less to make these kind of more the main focus. I wanted the mids and the highs to be more the focus because they have more of the harmonics that make the bass sound how it sounds. And then this EQ is doing very little, just boosting a little bit of lows, taking out some highs, and some mids are kind of being boosted. It's kind of pretty flat though. And then with this EQ, I took out some lows, added in some kind of in the middle between the mids and the lows. So yeah, it's a lot of EQing just for a little bit. And then that was it for track 32. And then as you can tell, it has 2 modulators on here. So why I had all those EQs is because one was doing modulation. I don't know which one it was. Oh, it was this one. This one was doing the modulation. And that is basically what's giving it that kind of vocally effect in the track. Is this EQ is going down, and then this one's kind of going up. So this one's the 4 and the 5. So the 4 and the 5 are being modulated. So this 4 would be going up, and then this 5 would also be going up. Or that might be going across, we'll see. So this is what they're doing. So that's the modulation there. And then now, for the second EQ, no, not for the second EQ, for the second pattern it plays, is here. It's doing this. So for this one, it really spikes those mids really high, and then gets the 5 over here, which would be the highs, just to go across. So that's what I did there, and with these EQs working with a prism, it gives it that unique sound for this drop. And then as well as these are going all the way through the drop, even through drop B. And then all that drop B is it is just a change in the pattern here. So I'll show you the change in the pattern here. So it just does a change in the pattern, nothing really in the envelopes yet until the second drop. So that is it for the drop, and then now I'm going to the bridge. So now let's go right into the bridge here. So again, it has a kick playing right on the 1. So I really like to get kicks on the 1 with the crashes to make them kind of more defined, because crashes don't have a whole lot of low tones. So the kick, I use the kick to make up for that. That's just my preference. And then I have the ARP coming back in, as well as this FM, and then the noise. Those just go for 2 bars, and it goes back into the verse. So here I have some hi-hats coming in. I just use velocity to fade them in on the piano roll, and a snare here. And then this little lead is this. And then it goes into the verse. And inside of the verse, this is the drum beat it's playing. Yes, it is playing a clap, a snare, and a snare. So this snare is going, this snare is going, and this clap. They're all going. And then on this drum beat, just does that for some variation on the final hit of the bar. And then this lead is playing. And that's what does it in here. And then on the second bar of this verse, it goes from here. All I did there was just pitch envelope. And then that's all the audio tracks that are playing here in the verse. And then for the rise, it's really the exact same as the other rise. And then into the second drop. So this is really the last part to go over, because it's the only part that has some variation. This part is kind of exact same except for the pitch switches. So I'm going to go into the second drop now. So everything is the same inside of the second drop except for this little bit. So I'm going to play this pattern. So this one took a little while to do. So first, the pattern is the same. Only difference is that with the mode X, I actually kept it at more of a constant rate, whereas in the first one it's shifting around a lot more. But on this second one, the harmonics are a much more constant rate, except for right here. And then right here, that would basically just be like a normal growl for FM synth, but since it's so distorted, it sounds like it's being stretched in a way, if you'll use those terms. And then right here, it is being stretched again. So this is this part without the bass and with just this. And then without this and just this, it's like this. And then it goes into this part. Now playing the whole thing just like this. So basically, just messing with cutoff and EQ is really just all that did that. The pattern is the same. I just added in another bass here, did some cutoff, and then here to cutoff and EQ, and that's what did it. So and it's just playing that all the way through the entire drop. Everything's the same here, except for on drop E. Again, the pattern changes to this. And that pattern does give it a unique feel here. So that's what's happening there. And then, again, at the very end of the drop, I do this little thing again with this. And it goes right into the verse. But right when it starts the verse, it is at a lower pitch, and then again goes to a higher pitch. As well as I do have a little more progression than that. Instead of just the pitch, I also do this. And then it fades out. And then it goes to the end. So that was everything I did in Trolls Walk. Let me get rid of this. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the BTS as well as the track. So this was Trolls Walk, first track for Wreckage, and keep an eye out for track 2, BTS of Choir of Angels, which will be coming on this channel really shortly. So I'll see you guys then. Bye.